You can absolutely conquer whatever it is you choose to confront. In this show, we talk PTG, we listen and believe, we support and empower. Whether you have experienced domestic violence personally or not, someone you know has. Your circle of family, friends, acquaintances, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience domestic violence at some point in their life. Physical abuse is only one of the many forms of domestic violence. Survivors also report experience of verbal, emotional, spiritual, sexual, financial, electronic, and so much more. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It can leave you traumatized and devastated, mentally, emotionally, financially. You can find yourself homeless, jobless, helpless. The list can go on. There's blankets of insecurities, triggers, doubts, and other residual effects that become hurdles that impact our life as we do our best to move on. Many people associate butterflies with a sense of freedom. We've been taught along the way to focus on the transformation that takes place inside of the cocoon. I invite you to take a moment to conceptualize all the odds the caterpillar was up against and needed to defeat in order to get to a safe place, to build its cocoon and actually experience the transformation. My name is A. Garcia. I am a mother and survivor of a double attempted homicide. Now, I'm dedicating my life to take yours to the next level by experiencing post-traumatic growth to begin a new chapter in your life. Let's get started on this journey together. Confronting Domestic Violence is a 501c3. All contributions, volunteers, and sponsorships are welcomed. It takes a community to make a difference. Nobody should suffer alone. Please scan the QR code. Garcia here, and thank you for tuning in. What we cover here is not intended to ignite any triggers. For what you want to conquer, you must confront. So, welcome to Confronting Domestic Violence. Today, I have Dr. Jan CANTY, who is willing to openly share her personal journey through the murder of her own husband. Welcome, Jan, and thank you for being a guest today on Confronting Domestic Violence.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. It's good to be here on an important topic.
Oh, isn't it? We were talking backstage for a while and talked quite a bit before you got here. And we really dug deep into post-traumatic growth and some very similar perspectives on life and what murder truly is and how we can deal with and cope better.
Right.
So please start wherever you would like to begin sharing.
Just as a general statement, I think I'd like to remind people, if they need it, that domestic violence can take many forms. It can take an economic control. It can take physical abuse without a doubt, but it can also be at an emotional level. And that's where mine derived from. I did not recognize I was even a part of that. I did not realize I was being gaslit, for such a term, gaslighted for many years. But once my husband was murdered, a lot of ugly truths came out. It was like day after day of revelations of information from detectives, from his old friends, from things I had found in his possessions that let me know that the life I thought we had didn't even exist. And had he not been murdered, I would have been out of there. I wouldn't have put up with it.
But it was covert. You weren't even aware.
I didn't know he was signing my name to papers. I did not know he'd literally given away all our money. I did not know that he had no life insurance, which he promised me he'd get. I did not know that we were 3 years behind on federal income taxes. The papers I had signed, he just trashed or put away someplace. I did not know that he loaned my car out to these thugs in the underworld that eventually turned on him and murdered him. I did not know that he gave this album that I had assembled for emergency purposes for insurance claims of all of our possessions, the estimated worth of what was in each room. He'd given that to them as well, so they had the layout of our house. It was like day after day of there was stuff I didn't even know till years later. And so it makes you end up feeling pretty darn foolish and questioning your ability to understand people and to be safe and to ever trust again. But the point being that physical scars and emotional scars are all scars. And it stems from a relationship of power and control on one side, and the woman being at a disadvantage in many respects and having to find her way out. I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and I made the analogy that I visualize it like being buried alive, and there comes a point where you've got to give it your all to survive, and you dig your way out of that hole, and when your feet are on top of the ground, you have to brush off all that excess crap, the stuff that you learned, the stuff that you thought was true, the stuff that you believed to be true, before you can even make your first steps. And it is in that time period where you're brushing it all off where I think society can be very cruel in their judgment of you. Why didn't you get out sooner? Why didn't you believe that? Why didn't this and that and the other? Where they do victim blaming, and you've just fought the battle of your life. That's the last thing you need at that point in time. And that's where shows like this come in to be important, because we need to understand one another and not judge one another. We need to provide information. We need to provide encouragement and to educate the upcoming generations with the dire hope that it reduces it from happening in the first place. I did it with my children, and I hope others do as well.
You hit so many nails on the head here. I want to go back to the trust. That is one of the most devastating moments in life, when you realize that what you trusted in yourself, the love that you gave, the love that you trusted that was coming in, to know that it was, to learn that it's a lie, to learn later that it was not a two-way street, that it was, that you were, what's the right word, like okey-doked or bad. What is the right word that I'm looking for? I don't know. There's so many words. I don't like to use them. but yeah, you feel stupid because you're like, how did I not know? How did I not see? But in reality, one of the things that I like to bring home is that when your emotions get involved, that doesn't mean that your logic goes away. There has to be this space where you're able to see beyond your emotions, and that's no discredit to you or me. I totally associate with what you're telling me, because I also went through an experience like that. And it's complete devastation. Your whole psychological understanding of life and love and yourself are then in question, which then leads to you being at this vulnerable space that you've probably never been in before. And then, like you're saying, the outside world and society with their stigmas and opinions, why this and why that. But until they're in that situation, which most of them that have an opinion have at some point in their life been through some emotional trauma that devastated their logic.
And one of the things that I faced was that while that was happening, while the uncovering and the learning about the lies was coming to the fore, it was all on a public stage. I was being hounded by the police. I was on the evening news against my will. They took photographs of me that I didn't authorize. They showed up at the funeral. They showed up at the morgue. They showed up at my office. They hounded me to the point where a year and a half later, I actually had to leave the city.
Wow.
They just wouldn't leave it alone.
Was an innocent bystander.
Yeah. And that gives the public, I think, in that situation when it's so publicized, I think it gives the public a false sense of knowing you and a false sense of entitlement, like they're your friend because they know your story. And then therefore they have the right to come up to you in public and ask questions, or to express an opinion, or to come by your house and take pictures, or steal things from your house. That's a common thing that happens in the aftermath of relatively well-known homicides, is theft. And you have a stigmatized property on your hands. And one of the many fallouts of murder is that it's harder to sell your house afterwards, even if the murder did not take place under the roof. And that's the reason, because death tourists are driving by and taking pictures and stealing things from the house, and it devalues the property on average by 15% nationwide for at least the first 3 years. In my case, it devalued at 25%.
Wow. And these are statistics and information that people don't even think about or consider, or probably even know.
I think the bulk of people when it comes to homicide really focus on the perpetrator, the ugly deed, maybe on the trial, and a little bit on the victim, period. That's it. If they think about the survivors of parents, the spouses, the children at all, it's like they're in the shadows and they show up at the funeral and they show up at the trial with tears in their eyes and then they fade off stage. That's the end of it. And then in a year or two, your life is back to normal. That's the assumption, which is where my niche comes in, because the thing I like to bring to the fore is whenever I can is the long-term adjustment that's in front of people goes on for decades. It's never over. Think about parole if they get out. There's never closure. There was a case I interviewed for my podcast where a young 2-year-old was murdered by the boyfriend, the abusive boyfriend of her mother. And he got convicted. He was given 20 years. He got out. And suddenly things started disappearing from her grave. And it was pushed over and desecrated time and time again, and nobody was ever caught. So how do you get, quote, closure on things like that? It doesn't end. It does not end. It is life altering, period.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that, I focus on too, is that post-traumatic growth and leveling up the coping skills. Because you're right, it doesn't go away. It's how do you live with
How do
it?
you use it for fuel and redirect all that energy, all that adrenaline, all that knowledge that you gain that you don't want, but in effect, all the knowledge that you gain, how do you channel that and redirect it for good? How do you make lemonade from lemons? That's what I think the key is about, and where we have our agreement on our own experiences.
So share some of the techniques or the tools that you were able to find and that actually worked for you to move on and get to a place where you were able to trust yourself again, because you can't really trust other people until you
No,
trust yourself.
no. I think that it was a gradual process. I did not speak of the homicide. I moved away because of the media intrusiveness. I did not speak of it for 30 years. I didn't tell a soul. Nobody knew.
And even though you
And
were on TV everywhere, excuse me, even though you were
no,
on
that's one of the
TV.
reasons I left. No, I went to a very tiny town in the middle
Okay.
of nowhere and started
Okay.
teaching at a small college, and nobody heard of me. And I changed my name. And this is before the internet, too. That makes it
Right.
easier. It was back in 1985, previous century. And
Stop it.
and when I finally came out of the shadows, I found that the number one thing that's important is connection with others who've had a similar experience as your own. No, you'll never find one that's identical, but you can find some that approximate it. And that's especially important if those people are standing upright and moving on, because it shows you it's possible.
That's right.
And then it's learning to educate others and speaking out and finding resources. And I find the biggest help for me was in connecting and educating and writing, doing things to counter the very process that got me in where I was in the beginning, and speak out on it. Because if we don't, nobody else is going to do it for us.
That's right. A closed mouth does not get fed.
Yeah. And I have learned a great deal from the people I've interviewed. I don't look at them at all like it's me helping them. I think we help each other. And there's never enough help out there for these kinds of situations. And there's even research that shows, just one little smidgen of research that shows that when people volunteer, their serotonin levels go up in their brain, which is a feeling good chemical, which triggers the immune process, which makes them less susceptible to illness. There's a good reason to help other people, among many others. There's biological proof of the good that it can do us in many ways beyond just feeling good about ourselves.
Absolutely. And for me, I will have to say again that I am completely in alignment with what you're saying as it relates to talking with other people who have gone through similar situations, and nothing will ever be identical. But yes, having that community and connecting with people that have similar traumas that we're all trying to get not over, but overcome,
Mhm.
right? And I feel also that there's more empowerment in that community than going to sit at a doctor's office in this awkward
Absolutely.
couch in this cold room, just blah 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 blah. And it's just, no, those days to me are over and gone, and been
Yeah.
there, done that with no results. And doing things like this, communicating with people and finding real matches for
Right.
podcasts or radio or TV, this is very therapeutic for so many of us.
And we're experts.
Yes, boots on the ground.
Yes. Yes. We didn't
Yeah,
learn about it from some book or seminar.
no, not at all. And it's funny that you say that, because I'm like, okay, for all those mothers that read that How to Raise Your Kid book, are you doing it? Because that's exactly what this is. And sometimes it's really hard to reach the more naive crowd, because when we are young and we don't have those experiences and we just hear about the stories, it's almost like a book. You're just like, yeah, okay, it's not gonna happen to me. Yeah, yeah, okay, I heard it. But
Yeah, we
until
feel
you're actually
invincible.
in it, I'm sorry?
Yeah, little kids feel invincible, teenagers too.
And even adults, when we think that we've been through enough in life and we know enough, like your situation, like my situation, the domestic violence comes in a covert way, which sometimes there's bruises and marks, but other times it's this long lasting mental, emotional impact that you
Hmm.
have to confront through the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And yeah, coming together is definitely, and sharing notes and providing resources and giving different information as it relates to things working. That's the purpose. That's helping each other out and building that community right there.
One of the things I'm up to my eyebrows in at the moment is a book that I'm almost finished with called What Now? Navigating the Aftermath of Homicide and Suicide. And I've written it in conjunction with 17 experts. And what the way it's organized is from big, like in terms of how things unfold. So it starts with the death notification, dealing with the media, planning the funeral, the trial, how to help your children cope, how the physical toll it takes a toll on you, about restorative justice and parole, and on down through long-term advocacy. It's 26 chapters. And I'm hoping it reaches the people that it needs to reach, because it's been a work of few years now getting it together. And there's, according to my editors too, there's no book like it out there that says, it's like a manual. This is a blueprint for how to cope after your husband or child commits suicide, or after they have been murdered, because the information is that might be available out there is very fractured, very fragmented, somewhat subjective, and all these helping agents that are out there don't communicate with each other. So the prosecuting attorney is not going to be talking to the ER doctor, and the ER doctor is not going to be talking to the crime victim advocate, who's not going to be talking to your kid's teacher. So it's also fragmented, and there's no collection point for mutual understanding, which is why coalitions would be something great to do in a community. But until we have that, this is at least a blueprint for how to get started.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for putting that together. I definitely going to put that in the captions here during our episode. And it's almost like we could treat the community like a corporation with business continuity, but having community continuity, especially in the legal system when it comes to violence. You're absolutely right, because that communication, there is such a huge gap, and that's why people aren't sentenced long enough, or victims aren't provided enough resources, and they have the issues of moving forward. And yeah, it is so fractured, because even during that time, what about after all of the chaos has settled, the dust has settled,
Right.
then you're stuck with that mental, emotional, that turns into physical ailments.
And one
And
thing that may surprise you, I don't know, or surprise your listeners, is that when it comes to wrongful convictions for murder, and they're done through using coerced confessions, they use this technique called the REID technique, REID technique. Women who have been in domestic violence situations are much more likely to admit to a murder they did not do. And one case in point right now is for Melissa Lucio. She is in Texas. She's on death row. She's twice been like a day or two away from execution, even though there is really nothing to back up what happened. And there are Texas representatives, senators, lawmakers, attorneys, and the public coming to her aid and saying, stop this. She's not guilty of what you're accusing her of. But that is another fallout from domestic violence, is that women get pummeled to the point where they'll admit to crimes they didn't do, up to and including murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I did not know that. But I can see how that would be just out of the fear tactic.
Yep. You're surrounded by a group of detectives in a small room, and they're pounding you verbally hour after hour. And she was crying under the desk, pregnant at the time when she finally said, and she had a 6th grade education, 14 children, not well educated, physically abused for years, under the table. And finally she said, maybe I did it. That's all she had to say. And that's what they ran with, and said she admitted to it.
Wow.
To killing her child. It didn't happen. There's no crime there. The child fell down a flight of stairs. But nobody wants to admit they're wrong. So I've put her situation in my upcoming book too, in the hopes that it won't ever be forgotten.
That's right. Wow. Wow. Yeah. And thank you just so much for all that you're doing in the community and helping not just everybody else, but also your continued healing and your continued growth. And that's the journey. That's the journey of post-traumatic growth throughout your entire life.
It is. But it's exhilarating, and it's addictive, and it's helpful, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's right. I'd rather be addicted to the good stuff too.
Yep.
Yeah, doing good and helping others and seeing the fruits of your labor. There's
Yes.
times where it's like sharing stories like this, even if somebody isn't going through something and can relate to it right now, if they hear it and it resonates and something is happening later on down the line in their life, it will resonate. It's a seed.
Or with their child when they get older, or a niece or a neighbor or a coworker or their parent, or who knows. Everybody knows someone.
That's right.
Who's in a dire situation, but they may not be aware of it.
That's right. One thing that I want to say here is when we go through such devastation, emotional turmoil, the trauma that we're dealt, that we're handed and that we have to deal with, even through all that confusion, self-doubts, if you don't know who you are, I guarantee you know exactly who you're not. And from there, you can establish your boundaries. And from there, as you grow, so do your boundaries. Just stay clear in your purpose, and the energy will come, the motivation will stay, and your situation will change. Time does heal, but the effort and the desire to get there is required.
And connecting with people who can mentor you and say, I've been there, I've been in your shoes, I know what you're feeling, as opposed to the old groups that want to pull you back into the fold.
Or you made your bed, lie in it, and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
That is not it.
No.
That is not it. Yeah. So tell our listeners where they can find you, and the name of the book, the name of everything, all your information.
Okay. I tried to make it real simple, so everything's on my website. So they just went to www.jancantyphd.com. It's all there. But I have the name of the book coming out, hopefully by March, is called What Now? Navigating the Aftermath of Homicide and Suicide. My prior book, which is more of a true crime memoir, is A Life Divided. My podcast is Domino Effect of Murder, without the, just Domino Effect of Murder, which is just starting in its 4th season, and it is heard in 26 countries at this point.
Wow.
And my guests are phenomenal.
They are. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, actually.
They're no two alike, and they've all got some hard-wrought wisdom to share, and do so willingly, and I think they're all brave for doing it. And I've learned a great deal from them in the process.
Oh my gosh, yes. And listening to them has really just, I believe, backed up my strong belief in how post-traumatic growth really does reside in so many of us on an instinctive level.
Yep.
And it just frustrates me to no end why it's not being taught or talked about or brought to the forefront of people's knowledge. Like,
I know.
You have to have the knowledge in order to apply.
Yes, yes. I think psychology, coming at it from a psychologist point of view, I think psychology is guilty of having a pathological twist to it, We want to talk about the pathology of depression, anxiety, drinking, whatever, rather than the health and the potential of people. Not 100%. There are a few that don't think that way, but there is a bent towards that. And I think that is sad, because instead we should be congratulating people that find their way out and have their feet on the ground and move forward. We could learn a lot from them.
Yes, 100%. I have my own experience of being prescribed different things that just resulted in adverse reactions and events, and it became a very dark, ugly hole and space that took a while to crawl out of. And yeah, I refuse to do that ever again in my life. I'd rather just deal with it head on and naturally go through the process.
When I was in the position of having to figure out how to help myself, because this is in the 1980s when there was no self-help groups, no internet, no nothing like that. And there wasn't even grief therapy at the time. I fell back on an old model that I was taught in grad school. It's called the biopsychosocial model. And it says, if you want to change your behavior, your thinking, your presence, you do it biologically, sociologically, and psychologically. So biologically, I started going to the gym. I started running. I started doing triathlons. Sociologically, I traveled the world and I helped volunteer for women's projects and girls' projects, like helping build schools in Kenya for girls that had no chance of education. And psychologically was the hardest part. And that was coming out and doing the podcast and saying, this is my past. But I found that by addressing all three, I felt almost unstoppable at a certain point. I really do. And I'm going to be 72 pretty soon, and I don't feel like it.
You don't look like it either.
And I've even had to beat back cancer. That was the 1-2 punch that I hadn't expected, but life can throw you some wrenches and you just deal with it as best you can. And I do now what I applied then, and I try to do my best, and we'll see what the outcome is. But is that I think there are many ways to help yourself. Connecting with others is a huge one. Getting yourself in physical shape when possible, to your physicians, of course, recommendations would come into play there. And also sociologically, which is why we're connecting. There are many ways to do it. They're all effective. And I think it begins with dialogues like this.
I love it. And one thing I picked up from you is that even though you say it took 30 years for you to speak on it, it sounds like during those 30 years, you were finding outlets.
I was.
And it was by giving back and helping and doing. So
I didn't realize it at the time. It just evolved, but yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's very inspiring, and thank you just for your vulnerability. This is a safe space, and I like teaching that you can be safe and vulnerable at the same time as well. And if you have a wounds to wisdom statement that you would like to share, I would love for you to share.
One of my favorite quotes is, women are a lot like teeth. They never know how strong they are until they're in hot water.
Hello.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
That's right. Oh, I have to share this. I'm not ready to end this yet. So you said something yesterday on a TikTok that I literally was quack, 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 laughing out loud. My son was like, "What's so funny?" And because he knew I was watching something on social media. And so I was cracking up because you said, if you ask a woman, when was the last time you felt unsafe or afraid? Versus asking the man, when was the last time you felt unsafe and afraid? The answer you received, I was cracking up. But it is so true. It is very true. The answers that you will get from a woman takes nothing but a second. And the answer will take a minute for the man to actually really think about.
Because they live in different realities.
Yeah, yeah.
Women are always in the back of their mind thinking about safety.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And domestic violence.
Without domestic violence, people who have not experienced it will think twice. Women will think twice about dark parking lots, etc., as opposed to men are like, because it's like the parking garages when you rent a car. If you go out, the forks go down and your car goes out and the tires don't get punctured. That's how men's worlds are. And for women, we're on the outside with all those things facing us, and to get in is very difficult. We are constantly living in a world where we have to be hypervigilant when out alone in particular. Yet the reality remains that we stand our biggest risk of domestic violence within our own home,
Yeah.
much more so than dark stairwells or parking lots or wherever.
And that is so unfortunate.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So choose your partners carefully and know that there are resources out there if need be.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate it and very humbled and honored.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And good luck to you on your show.
Thank you. Confronting Domestic Violence is a 501c3. All contributions, volunteers, and sponsorships are welcomed. It takes a community to make a difference. Nobody should suffer alone. Please scan the QR code.